The metallic taste of humiliation floods my mouth as I stare at the rejection letter trembling in my hands. Visa application denied again. They denied my visa again, just like the 17 times before, and this time the finality of it feels like a death sentence. The fluorescent lights in the embassy waiting room buzz overhead like angry wasps, and I can smell the stale coffee and broken dreams that permeate this place. Every breath I take tastes of disappointment and bureaucratic indifference. The same smug consular officer who crushed my hopes last month sits behind bulletproof glass, already calling the next number as if my devastation means nothing. I clutch the letter until my knuckles turn white, fighting the urge to scream at these walls that have witnessed my humiliation 18 times now. The paper crinkles under my grip, and I can hear the whispered conversations of other hopeful applicants behind me, their voices carrying the same desperate edge mine once held. Next! The officer's voice slices through my thoughts like a blade. My legs tremble as I stand, but I force myself to walk to his window one last time. Through the thick glass, I can see his nameplate clearly, James Morrison, Senior Consular Officer. I memorize his face, the condescending smirk, the way he barely glances at my documents, the dismissive wave of his hand as he slides my rejection back through the slot. Is there any explanation for this denial? My voice cracks despite my efforts to sound composed. He doesn't even look up from his computer screen. Insufficient ties to your home country. Next applicant, please. The sound of the number dispenser clicking echoes through the waiting room as another soul steps forward to potentially meet their dreams or join my club of the perpetually rejected. Papers rustle behind me as people shift nervously in their plastic chairs, and I catch fragments of hushed, disappointed whispers from those who've already received their verdicts. I want to argue, to demand he actually review my documentation, to scream that I have more ties to my education and future than he has brain cells, but what's the point? The system is rigged, and people like me, people from my country, my economic background, my family name, we're not meant to win here. As I turn to leave, my footsteps echo against the marble floor with a hollow finality, but something shifts inside me as I reach the exit. I pause, my hand on the heavy glass door, and look back at that office one more time. I memorize every face in that room, every name tag visible from here, every dismissive gesture and bored expression. This isn't over, I whisper to the empty air, a promise that will come true in ways I can't yet imagine. The autumn wind hits my face as I step outside, carrying with it the scent of dying leaves and the bitter taste of a future that feels increasingly out of reach. But there's something else in that wind today. Something that feels like change approaching, though I don't know it yet. My name is Elena Vasquez, and for 3 years I've been trapped in this bureaucratic nightmare that's slowly strangling my dreams to death. Every rejection feels like another nail in the coffin of the life I was supposed to have, the future I earned but can't claim. The crisp autumn air bites my face as I stumble out of the embassy, but it's nothing compared to the ice that's been growing in my chest with each denial. My breath forms small clouds in the cold, disappearing just like my hopes seem to do every few months when I make this same walk of shame. I was supposed to start my PhD at Cambridge 18 months ago. The acceptance letter still hangs on my bedroom wall, yellowing now like an old photograph of someone else's life. Sometimes I catch my mother staring at it when she thinks I'm not looking, and I can see the guilt in her eyes. Guilt that shouldn't be there because saving her life was worth every sacrifice. Her cancer treatment emptied our savings account like water through a broken dam. 3 surgeries, 6 months of chemotherapy, and countless doctor visits drained everything we had built for my education fund. The irony tastes bitter on my tongue. The daughter who was supposed to lift our family out of poverty became the one who couldn't leave because poverty kept her tethered. Without that student visa, I can't access the full scholarship that would change everything. The university has been patient, but their patience has limits, and those limits are approaching faster than I can find solutions. The rough texture of the brick wall scrapes against my back as I lean against the embassy building, fighting back tears that taste like salt and failure. I pull out my phone with shaking fingers and scroll through the photos from my acceptance ceremony at the local university where I finished my master's degree. Top of my class, summa cum laude, research published in 3 academic journals, None of it matters when the person reviewing your application sees your passport and decides your dreams aren't worth their time. My phone buzzes with a text from my mother. How did it go, mija? I can't bring myself to type the truth, not yet. The lies I tell her are getting harder to maintain, but they're all that's keeping her spirits up during her recovery. She believes in me more than I believe in myself these days, and destroying that faith feels worse than swallowing my own disappointment. A group of successful applicants walks past me, their visa approval letters clutched in their hands like golden tickets. I listen to their excited chatter about flight bookings and dormitory assignments, and I start recording their happiness in my memory alongside every detail of my rejection experience. Someday, I tell myself, someday I'll understand this system well enough to beat it. The bitter taste of tears mixes with the metallic flavor of blood where I've bitten my lip too hard. My hands shake as I start walking home, but it's not from the cold anymore. It's from the rage building inside me like a pressure cooker about to explode. Just as I'm about to cross the street, my phone rings with an unknown number. The caller ID shows a local area code, but something about the timing feels significant, like the universe is about to shift in ways I can't predict. Hello? My voice sounds hollow even to my own ears. Elena Vasquez? This is Dr. Sarah Chen from the International Relations Institute. I received your research proposal about immigration policy reform, and I'd like to discuss an opportunity with you. The world tilts slightly on its axis as she speaks, but I'm too emotionally drained to feel the hope I should. Still, I find myself agreeing to meet her tomorrow, though I can't imagine what opportunity she could offer someone who can't even get a visa to continue her own education. As I hang up, the first drops of rain begin to fall, and I realize I'm standing at the exact intersection where my life is about to change forever, though not in any way I could have anticipated. The truck appears out of nowhere as I cross the street, my vision blurred by tears and rage and the sudden downpour that turned the afternoon dark as my mood. The screech of brakes pierces the air like a banshee wail, but it's too late to matter. Time dilates as I see the massive grille approaching, and my last coherent thought is how fitting it is that my dreams would die the same day I do. The impact sends me flying, and the world becomes a kaleidoscope of spinning sky and concrete. The last thing I remember is the smell of burning rubber mixed with something metallic and warm that I realize must be my own blood. Then everything goes black, and I think this is how stories like mine end. Not with triumph, but with a whimper on a rainy street corner. But death isn't the end. It's a beginning I never saw coming. I wake up in a hospital bed, but something fundamental has shifted in the core of my being. The first thing I notice is that the nurse checking my vitals has kind eyes. And when she speaks to her colleague in what should be rapid, incomprehensible medical jargon, I understand every word perfectly. Not just in English, but somehow I know she could switch to Spanish, French, Arabic, or Mandarin, and I'd understand those too. Her brain activity has been unusual, the nurse murmurs to someone I can't see. The neurologist wants to run more tests when she's fully conscious. The IV drip sounds like a metronome counting down to something extraordinary, each drop marking time until I discover what I've become. My body feels different, not just from the injuries, which seem surprisingly minimal considering what happened, but energized in a way that defies explanation. The antiseptic smell of the hospital mingles with something else, something that smells like possibility and change. When I try to remember what happened, the memories flow through my mind with perfect clarity, each detail crisp and accessible in ways my memories never were before. I can recall not just what happened, but every conversation I overheard in that embassy waiting room, every facial expression, every bureaucratic phrase used to dismiss dreams like mine. "Miss Vasquez, can you hear me?" A doctor's voice draws my attention, and I turn to see a middle-aged man with gentle eyes and tired features. His badge reads, Dr. Martinez, Neurology. "I can hear you," I say, and my voice sounds different too, stronger, more confident. "How long have I been here?" His eyebrows raise slightly. "You've been in a medically induced coma for 6 months. We weren't sure when or if you'd wake up." 6 months. The world has kept spinning while I was unconscious, and somehow I feel like I've been elsewhere, learning things I shouldn't know, gaining abilities that shouldn't exist. The soft cotton sheets beneath my fingers feel more real than anything I've touched before, as if my senses have been amplified along with everything else. Your recovery is remarkable, Dr. Martinez continues, pulling up a chair beside my bed. The accident should have caused severe brain trauma, but your scans show not just complete healing, but enhanced neural activity in areas associated with memory, language processing, and pattern recognition. I nod, absorbing this information while simultaneously understanding the medical terminology he's using, the implications of the tests he's describing, and the legal frameworks that govern patient rights in situations like this. The knowledge flows through my mind like water, finding its level, natural and effortless. Doctor, I say carefully, testing the waters, what's the current status of the International Relations Institute's fellowship program? He blinks in surprise. I'm not sure. Why do you ask? But I already know the answer. Somehow, in this reborn state, I have access to information that should be impossible for me to possess. The fellowship program expanded 3 months ago. Dr. Chen, who called me the day of my accident, has been promoted to department head. And there's a new position opening that's perfect for someone with my background, if I can prove I have the skills to excel in international relations and policy analysis. The steady beep of monitors provides a soundtrack to my awakening, but it's not just a physical awakening anymore. Something has fundamentally changed in my mind, and I suspect the accident didn't just save me from a life of rejection. It transformed me into someone who can finally fight back effectively. As night falls outside my hospital window, I begin to plan. The rebirth gave me more than just my life back. It gave me the tools I need to tear down the system that tried to destroy me. But first, I need to understand exactly what I've become and how to use these new abilities without arousing suspicion. The nurse returns to check on me one more time before her shift ends, and I listen as she updates my chart in 3 different languages, understanding every word perfectly. Tomorrow, I'll start the real work of discovering just how much the universe has changed the rules of this game. The rebirth gave me more than just linguistic abilities. It gifted me perfect memory and an intuitive understanding of legal systems worldwide. Every immigration law, every diplomatic protocol, every loophole they use to keep people like me out, it all flows through my mind like water through a sieve, clear and accessible and perfectly organized. Dr. Martinez can't explain the sudden cognitive enhancement that shows up on every test they run. Perhaps the trauma triggered dormant neural pathways, he theorizes, but his uncertainty radiates through every word. I know better. This feels divine, purposeful, like the universe decided to level a playing field that was never fair to begin with. The fluorescent hospital lights no longer irritate me the way they did in the embassy. Instead, they illuminate my path forward with crystalline clarity. I can see patterns in everything now. The way the medical staff interacts, the hierarchies that govern hospital bureaucracy, the unspoken rules that determine who gets attention and who gets ignored. During my 2 weeks of observation and testing, I devour every piece of information I can access. The hospital's Wi-Fi password reveals itself to me through careful observation of the nurses' typing patterns. Legal databases open like books I've read 1,000 times. International relations journals feel like conversations with old friends rather than academic mysteries. I discharge myself on a Tuesday morning, walking out of that hospital with the confidence of someone who finally understands the game being played. The autumn air tastes different now, crisp with opportunity rather than bitter with defeat. My footsteps on the sidewalk sound decisive, purposeful, each one taking me closer to a future I'm going to build with my own hands. The first thing I do is apply for a position at the International Relations Institute. My application essay writes itself, each word precisely chosen to demonstrate expertise that shouldn't exist but does. I know exactly what they want to hear because I can see the patterns in their previous selections, the coded language they use to describe their ideal candidates, the subtle biases that influence their decisions. Dr. Chen's office smells like coffee and ambition when I arrive for my interview 3 days later. She's a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and silver hair pulled back in a way that suggests efficiency without sacrificing elegance. When she speaks, I can hear the careful neutrality she's cultivated to navigate academic politics, but I also detect genuine curiosity about my research proposal. Your thesis on immigration policy reform is remarkably insightful, she says, leaning back in her leather chair. The way you've analyzed the intersection of economic factors and bureaucratic bias suggests a deep understanding of how these systems actually function, rather than how they're supposed to function. I smile, letting a hint of my newfound confidence show through. I've had extensive firsthand experience with the gaps between policy and practice. The click of her pen against her desk provides a rhythmic backdrop as she considers my words. I can sense her making mental calculations about my background, my qualifications, my potential value to their organization. What she doesn't know is that I can read the micro expressions that reveal her decision-making process. We have a junior research position available, she finally says. It would involve analyzing visa approval patterns and policy implementation across multiple consulates. The work requires attention to detail and the ability to identify systemic issues that others might miss. The irony tastes sweet as honey on my tongue. They want to hire me to study the very system that tried to destroy me, not knowing that I understand it better than anyone who's ever worked in this field. The fresh coffee aroma in her office mixes with the scent of justice finally within reach. I'm very interested, I reply, and my voice carries none of the desperation that used to creep in when I spoke about my future. This time, I know I have something valuable to offer. After I leave her office, I spend the evening crafting follow-up materials that demonstrate exactly the kind of analytical thinking they need. Every chart I create, every pattern I identify, every recommendation I make is designed to show them that I don't just understand immigration policy, I understand how to fix what's broken in it. But as I work late into the night, my enhanced memory keeps returning to a voice I recognize from the interview scheduling call. The woman who confirmed my appointment time worked at the embassy that rejected me. Her voice carries the same dismissive undertone I heard 18 times before, and I realize this opportunity might be more interconnected than I initially thought. The crisp paper texture of my research notes feels different under my fingers now. Not like desperate scribbling, but like the foundation of something that will reshape everything I've experienced. Tomorrow, I'll learn whether this position is the key to the justice I've been seeking or just another door that will slam in my face. But this time, I'm not the same person who can be so easily dismissed. This time, I'm someone who understands the game well enough to win it. The irony tastes sweet as honey when I walk into the same building that housed my tormentors, but this time through the employee entrance instead of the supplicant's door. 6 months of strategic networking and flawless performance earned me a junior position in visa processing, exactly where I need to be to understand how the machine works from the inside. My supervisor, Janet Morrison, used to work at the embassy that rejected me. She doesn't recognize me, of course, because people like her never really see people like me when we're on the other side of the bulletproof glass. The air conditioning hums a different tune when you're on the inside of power, and the coffee definitely tastes better when it's free and served in real mugs instead of paper cups. Janet has the same dismissive energy I remember from the embassy, but now I can observe her from a position where I'm supposed to belong. She speaks to me with the patronizing tone reserved for junior staff, explaining procedures as if I'm not already 3 steps ahead of her thinking. The whisper of files being sorted becomes my daily soundtrack as I learn the rhythms of bureaucratic power. Elena, you'll be reviewing initial applications for completeness, she explains on my first day, her leather chair creaking as she leans back with the confidence of someone who's never doubted her right to make decisions about other people's futures. Nothing complex, just making sure all the required documents are included before they go to the consular officers for review. I nod respectfully, but inside I'm cataloging every detail of their process. The cologne mixed with stress sweat that permeates this office tells a story of people who wield power they don't entirely understand. I can smell the fear beneath their authority, the knowledge that their positions depend on maintaining systems they've never questioned. I start small, questioning inconsistent rejections with the careful tone of someone eager to learn rather than challenge. I noticed this application was denied for insufficient financial documentation, but the bank statements show more assets than our published minimum requirements. Should I flag this for review? Janet barely glances at the file. If it was denied, there was a good reason. The consular officers know what they're doing. But I've already documented the pattern. Applications from certain countries face scrutiny that others don't. Family names that sound too foreign get extra attention in all the wrong ways. Financial requirements shift based on assumptions about the applicant's intent to return home. My colleagues marvel at my natural instincts for the work, not knowing I lived every frustration from the other side. When I suggest procedural improvements that mysteriously align with applicants' needs, they praise my fresh perspective. What they don't realize is that every suggestion comes from understanding what it feels like to be on the receiving end of their arbitrary decisions. You have an unusual ability to anticipate where applications might face challenges, comments David Chen, one of the senior analysts during a team meeting. It's like you can see the process from the applicant's perspective. If only he knew how literally true that statement is. Within 3 months, I've documented patterns of discrimination that would make front-page news if the right journalist got hold of them. Late nights in the office become my favorite time, when the security guard's footsteps echo down empty hallways and I can dig deeper into classified files without interruption. My enhanced memory catalogs every inconsistency, every suspicious pattern, every case where qualified applicants were rejected, for reasons that don't appear in any official guidelines. The printer's mechanical whisper becomes my soundtrack as I create backup copies of everything, building a database of evidence that will be crucial when the time comes to act. But I'm not ready to reveal what I know yet. First, I need to position myself higher in the hierarchy, somewhere with real decision-making power. The current system isn't just flawed. It's designed to fail people like me, and changing it will require more than documentation. It will require the authority to rewrite the rules. The breakthrough comes when I discover the monthly quota meetings, where targets for approval rates are set based on political pressure rather than merit. Janet assumes I'm not paying attention during these briefings, but I'm absorbing every word, every gesture, every revelation about how the system really works. We need to be more selective with applications from developing countries this quarter, she announces during one particularly revealing meeting. The ambassador is concerned about maintaining our security profile. Security profile. Code words for keeping out people who look like me, sound like me, dream like me. As I walk home that evening, the weight of official documents in my briefcase feels like evidence in a trial that hasn't happened yet. My hands shake slightly. Not from fear, but from the electric thrill of uncovering truth that's been hidden behind bureaucratic language and official denials. Tomorrow, I'll continue playing the role of the eager junior analyst, but tonight I'm planning how to climb high enough to tear down everything they've built to keep people like me out. The game is rigged, but I finally understand the rules well enough to change them. And someone else is working late in the building tonight. I can hear their footsteps approaching my office, and I need to decide whether they're a threat to my mission or a potential ally in the war I'm preparing to wage. Late nights in the office reveal what daylight deliberately obscures, and tonight the building feels like a tomb filled with secrets that need to die. The security guard's footsteps echo down empty hallways as I dig deeper into classified files, my enhanced memory cataloging every inconsistency, every suspicious pattern that daylight bureaucracy works so hard to hide. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead like electronic insects, casting everything in harsh relief as I uncover the truth that's been hiding in plain sight. There's a quota system, unofficial but absolutely real, embedded in the culture so deeply that most employees follow it without realizing they're part of something morally bankrupt. Certain countries, certain economic backgrounds, certain family names trigger automatic rejections, regardless of qualifications. The discrimination I faced wasn't personal. It was institutional, systematic, and designed to preserve an exclusive club that people like me could never join. Every rejection I suffered was part of a larger machine designed to maintain barriers that have nothing to do with merit or security. The printer's mechanical whisper becomes my soundtrack as I document everything, each page that emerges feeling like evidence in a trial that hasn't happened yet. The stale after-hours air carries the scent of secrets finally being exposed, and my hands shake slightly. Not from fear, but from the electric thrill of uncovering truth that will reshape everything. I've found internal memos that explicitly discuss maintaining demographic balance in visa approvals, training materials that teach consular officers to look for cultural indicators that suggest an applicant won't return home. performance evaluations that reward officers for maintaining low approval rates from certain regions while encouraging approvals from others. The most damning evidence sits in a folder marked Policy Guidelines, Internal Use Only. It contains a point system for evaluating applications that adds or subtracts points based on factors that would be illegal if they were made public. Country of birth, -5 points for high-risk nations. Family income, -3 points for applicants below arbitrary thresholds. Educational background, -points for degrees from non-Western institutions, regardless of their actual quality. My enhanced abilities allow me to see patterns that others miss, connections between seemingly unrelated policies that create a web of exclusion. The buzz of fluorescent lights provides a steady rhythm as I cross-reference denial rates with demographic data, revealing disparities so stark they could only be intentional. But I'm not alone in the building tonight. Footsteps approach my office, measured, deliberate steps that suggest someone who knows exactly where they're going. I quickly close the sensitive files and switch to routine paperwork, my heart racing as I prepare to explain my late-night presence. Working late again, Elena? The voice belongs to Michael Torres, a senior policy analyst who's been watching me with interest for the past few weeks. He stands in my doorway with the casual confidence of someone who belongs here after hours, but there's something in his expression that suggests he knows more about my activities than he's letting on. Just trying to stay on top of the caseload, I reply carefully, studying his face for signs of suspicion or alliance. He steps into my office and closes the door behind him, the soft click echoing in the quiet space. I know what you're doing, he says quietly, and my blood runs cold until he continues. And I think it's about time someone did it. The rustle of sensitive documents seems louder in the sudden silence as he approaches my desk. I've been documenting the same patterns for 2 years, but I've never had anyone with your analytical skills to help me understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. Relief floods through me as I realize I've found an ally rather than an enemy. How long have you known? Since your second week here. You ask the same questions I've been asking, but you see connections I've been missing. Your background gives you insights that those of us who've always been on the inside can't access. I lean back in my chair, weighing how much to reveal. It's worse than just bias. It's a designed system of exclusion with built-in deniability. Show me, he says, and I realize the moment of truth has arrived. I create an encrypted backup of all evidence before showing him my findings. But Michael's reaction tells me I've made the right choice in trusting him. His anger at the documented discrimination matches my own, and his insider knowledge fills gaps in my understanding of how these policies are implemented and maintained. There's something else you should know, he says as we review the evidence together. Ambassador Harrison is retiring next year. The position that oversees all regional visa operations. It's going to be open, and with your analytical skills and my institutional knowledge, we might be able to put someone in that role who can actually change things. The weight of possibility settles over me like a mantle of responsibility. The same building that once crushed my dreams could become the platform from which I rebuild the entire system. The irony is so perfect, it feels like destiny. As we work through the night, comparing notes and building a comprehensive picture of institutional discrimination, I realize that my rebirth led me to exactly where I need to be. The accident that should have ended my story instead positioned me to rewrite the ending for thousands of people who will face the same barriers I did. But achieving real change will require more than documentation. It will require power, and power requires patience, strategy, and the kind of political maneuvering I'm only beginning to understand. The game is bigger than I realized, but so am I. Ambassador Harrison's retirement announcement sends shockwaves through our department like a political earthquake that rearranges the landscape of possibility. The position oversees visa operations for the entire region, the ultimate position of power in this bureaucratic kingdom that once held me hostage to other people's prejudices. The morning coffee tastes different knowing this opportunity exists, bitter with ambition and sweet with the possibility of justice finally having a seat at the table where decisions are made. Steam rises from my mug like incense offered to the gods of bureaucratic change, and I can smell the shift in office dynamics as everyone begins calculating their chances. My enhanced abilities make the complex application process feel like child's play, each requirement falling into place with preternatural ease. Every essay question about diplomatic philosophy, every interview scenario about crisis management, every diplomatic challenge they present, I navigate them with the confidence of someone who understands not just the technical aspects, but the human cost of every policy decision. The selection committee's impressed murmurs follow me through the halls like a Greek chorus celebrating my inevitable ascension. Department heads who barely acknowledged my existence 3 months ago now stop to discuss policy analysis with me, their voices carrying the respectful tone reserved for recognized experts. Your presentation on systematic bias and application review was extraordinary, Dr. Chen mentions during one of these encounters. The way you documented patterns that others missed suggests exactly the kind of analytical thinking we need in leadership positions. But I'm not the only candidate with ambitions for this role. Victoria Sterling, daughter of former Ambassador William Sterling, leverages her family's influence, while I rely on pure competence. The contrast energizes me. I've always performed better when the odds seemed stacked against me, and this challenge feels like a final exam in everything I've learned about how power really works. The click of heels on marble floors becomes a soundtrack to the campaign as various candidates make their rounds, building coalitions and making promises. I listen to whispered conversations in bathroom stalls and break rooms, my enhanced hearing picking up details about vote counts and backroom deals that others assume are private. Victoria's strategy relies on name recognition and traditional networks, but mine focuses on demonstrating competence that can't be ignored. When I present my policy reform proposals to the selection committee, I don't just identify problems. I provide detailed implementation plans that show exactly how to fix them. Your understanding of process improvement is remarkable for someone with limited administrative experience, comments Senator Martinez during one of the formal interviews. How do you account for this depth of insight? I've spent considerable time studying the gap between policy intentions and practical outcomes, I reply, which is true in ways he'll never understand. Sometimes an outside perspective can identify solutions that institutional thinking overlooks. The weight of official documents in my briefcase feels heavier each day as the decision approaches. Every page represents not just policy analysis, but the foundation for transformation that could affect thousands of future applicants. My hands remain steady now when I sign my name, each signature feeling like a promise to everyone who was denied the opportunities I'm finally within reach of claiming. Michael Torres has become my unofficial campaign manager, using his institutional knowledge to navigate political currents I'm still learning to read. Victoria has the traditional advantages, he explains during one of our strategy sessions, but you have something more powerful. You understand what's actually broken and how to fix it. The alliance we've built extends beyond just the two of us. Other reform-minded officials have quietly expressed support for my candidacy, recognizing that meaningful change requires leadership that understands both the technical and human aspects of immigration policy. But the critical vote is approaching, and despite all my preparation and all the evidence of my qualifications, I still need one more supporter to secure the position. The math is brutal. Victoria has her father's old network locked up, and I need to convert at least one traditional vote to my side. As I review my final presentation materials, the evening sunlight streams through my office windows with the golden quality that suggests important moments approaching. Tomorrow's committee meeting will determine whether my rebirth story culminates in the power to rewrite the system that tried to destroy me, or whether I'll have to find other ways to fight battles I know need to be fought. The building feels different tonight, charged with the potential for transformation that extends far beyond one person's career advancement. This isn't just about my ambitions anymore. It's about whether institutional change is possible when someone who understands the cost of discrimination finally gets the authority to rewrite the rules. Everything I've learned, everything I've documented, everything I've become since that accident in the rain, it all comes down to whether I can convince one more person that competence matters more than connections and that the future requires leaders who understand the human cost of bureaucratic indifference. The confirmation ceremony unfolds like a dream I never dared to have, each moment crystallizing into reality as my name is called and my appointment is officially announced. The same embassy where they denied my visa 17 times now hosts my swearing in as regional ambassador for visa operations, and the irony isn't lost on anyone who bothers to check the records, which no one does because people like them never imagine people like me keep receipts. The morning sunlight streams through tall windows as I raise my right hand and recite the oath of office, each word carrying the weight of every rejection I endured, every dream they tried to crush, every moment I stood on the other side of bulletproof glass, pleading for basic fairness. My voice remains steady, as I promise to uphold the principles of justice and equality that this institution has ignored for far too long. In the audience, I spot faces I recognize from my months of research and documentation. Janet Morrison sits in the third row, her expression carefully neutral as she watches her former subordinate ascend to a position of authority she never thought possible. Dr. Chen beams with pride, her investment in my potential vindicated by this moment of transformation. But the most satisfying presence is Michael Torres, whose alliance made this victory possible. His knowing smile carries the weight of all our late-night strategy sessions, all the evidence we compiled, all the reform proposals we've prepared for implementation. Today marks not just my personal triumph, but the beginning of systematic change we've been planning for months. The scratch of expensive pens fills the air as I sign the official documents that transfer authority into my hands. Each signature feels like rewriting history, transforming me from victim to victor in a system that was designed to ensure people like me never achieved positions of real power. "Congratulations, Ambassador Vasquez," says Chairman Richardson as he shakes my hand. "We look forward to your leadership in modernizing our approach to visa operations." Modernizing. Such a diplomatic word for dismantling discrimination and rebuilding fairness into every process and procedure. My first official act revolutionizes the review process with surgical precision. Every application now requires 3 independent evaluations, and any rejection must include specific, documented reasoning that can be reviewed and appealed. The old guard bristles at these unnecessary complications, but I sleep soundly knowing tomorrow's applicants won't face the arbitrary decisions that defined my own experience. The ambassador's office smells like leather and power, but it feels like justice finally finding its proper home. The heavy wooden desk that once intimidated me when I visited as a supplicant now serves as the platform from which I'll rebuild the entire system. When I sign my first approval letter for a student from my old neighborhood, my hand doesn't tremble. It flourishes with the confidence of someone who finally has the authority to make things right. The polished wood surfaces reflect light differently now, illuminating not just the room but the possibilities for transformation that extend far beyond these walls. I've installed new procedures for tracking approval rates by demographics, ensuring that the patterns of discrimination I documented will be impossible to maintain without detection. "The changes you're implementing are quite comprehensive," observes Director Walsh during our first staff meeting. "Some of the senior officers are concerned about the additional documentation requirements." "Transparency and accountability shouldn't be concerns for officers who are making fair decisions," I reply, letting my meaning settle over the room like truth finally given voice. The weight of official seals feels different in my hands now. Not like barriers to be overcome, but like tools for building the fairness that should have existed all along. Every policy memo I approve, every procedure I modify, every training update I authorize carries the DNA of someone who understands both the technical requirements and the human cost of getting these decisions wrong. But my transformation isn't complete yet. Real change requires more than just new procedures. It requires changing the culture that allowed discrimination to flourish in the first place. And that means confronting the people who built and maintained the system that tried to destroy me. As I settle into my new role, the evening light filters through my office windows with the promise of battles yet to be fought. My first major challenge arrives sooner than expected, in the form of a familiar name on the rejection pile that will test whether I've truly gained the power to rewrite the rules, or whether the old systems still have ways to protect their own. The application on my desk makes me pause mid-sip of my morning coffee, the familiar name jumping off the page like a ghost from my past demanding attention. Victoria Sterling, my former rival for the ambassadorship, now needs a visa for a lucrative position in Geneva, and her arrogant assumption of approval radiates through every perfectly formatted page. The morning sunlight streams through my office windows differently now, illuminating not just my desk, but the full circle this moment represents. Her application landed here through the same system that once crushed my dreams, but now I hold the authority to ensure that merit, not privilege, determines the outcome. My enhanced memory recalls every detail of our previous encounters with crystalline clarity, every condescending comment during our interview processes, every time she suggested I wasn't ambassador material, every casual dismissal of my qualifications while she leaned on her family name like a crutch. The irony tastes sweeter than honey as I review her documentation with the same scrutiny applied to everyone else. Victoria's resume reads like a monument to mediocrity dressed in designer clothing. Her previous position at the State Department was clearly a family favor. Her published work shows no original thinking, and her references all trace back to her father's old network rather than independent professional achievements. The qualifications that she assumed would guarantee approval fall short of the published standards we now consistently apply. The review process I established treats her application with mathematical precision, no special considerations granted, despite the sterling name that once opened every door. The weight of the official stamp feels satisfying in my hands as I prepare to deliver a decision based purely on merit, something she's never experienced in her privileged life. But first, I want to savor this moment of cosmic justice. I pick up my phone and dial her number, listening to the confident ring that suggests she's expecting good news. When she answers, her voice carries the entitled certainty of someone who's never doubted their right to whatever they want. Victoria, this is Ambassador Vasquez calling about your visa application. The slight pause tells me she's processing the unexpected formality of my tone. Elena, I was hoping to hear from you. I assume everything's moving along smoothly. Actually, I need to discuss some concerns about your application. Would you be available to meet in my office tomorrow at 2 o'clock? The rustle of papers on her end suggests she's checking her calendar, but I can hear the first notes of uncertainty creeping into her voice. Concerns? What kind of concerns? I think it's best if we discuss them in person. I'll see you tomorrow. I hang up before she can protest, letting her spend the night wondering what could possibly go wrong for someone with her connections. The antiseptic smell of the office building carries a different meaning now, not the sterile environment of institutional indifference, but the clean scent of a system finally being disinfected. The next day arrives with the crisp clarity of autumn air carrying the promise of change. Victoria appears at my office door exactly on time, her designer suit and perfect makeup unable to hide the anxiety that radiates from her like heat waves. She's clearly spent the intervening hours trying to figure out what leverage she might need to use, not realizing that leverage means nothing when the decision maker finally understands the game. Please have a seat. I gesture to the chair across from my desk, the same type of chair where I once sat as a supplicant, begging for fairness from people who had already decided I didn't deserve it. She settles into the chair with practiced elegance, but I can smell her expensive perfume mixed with the sharp scent of desperation that money can't mask. Elena, I'm sure whatever concerns you have, we can work them out quickly. The Geneva position starts next month and… Your application has been denied. I interrupt, sliding the official letter across my desk with the same casual dismissal she once showed to people like me. The silence that follows is so complete, I can hear the hum of the building's ventilation system, the distant sound of phones ringing in other offices, the whispered conversations of people whose lives aren't being upended by bureaucratic decisions. Victoria's face cycles through shock, disbelief, and then anger as she processes what she's hearing. That's impossible, she finally manages. Do you know who I am? My father was an ambassador for 20 years. I have references from… I know exactly who you are, I reply, my voice carrying the steady confidence of someone who's finally in control of their own story. The question is, do you know who you're talking to? The recognition dawns slowly across her face as I hand her copies of my old rejection letters, all 17 of them, each one a monument to the system's arbitrary cruelty. The paper feels different in my hands now, transformed from weapons of humiliation into trophies of triumph that prove justice sometimes finds a way to balance the scales. Elena Vasquez, she whispers, and for the first time in our acquaintance, she says my name with something approaching respect instead of dismissal. The same Elena Vasquez, who was denied a visa 17 times by a system that valued connections over competence, I confirm. The same person you suggested wasn't ambassador material during our interview process. She looks down at the rejection letters with the same hollow expression I once wore when facing similar decisions. But my qualifications are insufficient according to the same standards applied to every applicant. Your previous position shows no independent achievements. Your published work lacks original contribution. Your references all trace back to family connections rather than professional merit. I let each point sink in before continuing. In short, you've never earned anything on your own, and this position requires someone who understands what merit actually means. The meeting ends with her understanding that excellence, not entitlement, determines approval in my embassy. As she gathers her dignity and prepares to leave, I notice the same defeated slump in her shoulders that I once carried through these halls, the universal posture of someone whose assumed future has just evaporated. But this story isn't about revenge, it's about transformation. By evening, I've approved applications from 12 qualified candidates who might have been rejected under the old system. Each signature feels like a small act of liberation, not just for them, but for everyone who comes after them. A brilliant Pakistani engineer who will revolutionize renewable energy. A Honduran medical student who will return home to serve rural communities. A Nigerian artist whose work will bridge cultural divides. Each approval honors not just the applicant's merit, but the girl who once stood on the other side of bulletproof glass, clutching her dreams in trembling hands, while bureaucrats decided her future based on prejudice rather than potential. Victoria storms into my office 3 days later, her privilege finally confronting the reality that doors don't always open for people like her. Yet, the satisfying thud of her heels on my carpet announces her arrival before she speaks, and I can smell her expensive perfume mixed with the sharp scent of desperation that no amount of money can mask. "You can't do this to me," she demands, slamming my denial letter on my desk with enough force to rattle my coffee cup. "Do you know who I am?" The question hangs in the air like incense at a memorial service. For her old world where names mattered more than merit, where privilege trumped competence, where people like me existed only to validate the superiority of people like her. I lean back in my leather chair, the same type of furniture that once intimidated me, and smile with the quiet confidence of someone who earned their place through excellence rather than inheritance. "I know exactly who you are," I reply, my voice steady as a judge pronouncing sentence. "You're someone who's never earned anything independently, who assumed doors would always open because of your last name, who dismissed qualified candidates because they didn't fit your narrow definition of worthiness." The morning light streams through my windows, casting everything in sharp relief as the moment of truth arrives. Victoria's face cycles through emotions like weather patterns, surprise giving way to anger, anger dissolving into desperation. Desperation finally settling into something approaching understanding. "The question is," I continue, savoring every word, "do you know who you're talking to?" I reach into my desk drawer and withdraw a manila folder containing 17 rejection letters, each one a testament to systemic discrimination disguised as policy. The paper feels different in my hands now, not like evidence of my failures, but like proof of a system so broken that it rejected excellence while embracing mediocrity. "Elena Vasquez," she whispers as recognition finally dawns, and for the first time in our relationship, she speaks my name with something that might be respect rather than dismissal. The same Elena Vasquez who was denied a visa 17 times by people who valued connections over competence, I confirm, spreading the letters across my desk like cards in a game where I finally hold the winning hand. The same person you suggested wasn't ambassador material because I didn't have the right pedigree. Her eyes widen as she scans the rejection letters, each one bearing the official seal of the same institution where she now sits, powerless and pleading. The irony is so perfect, it feels orchestrated by forces beyond human planning, justice delivered with surgical precision after years of patience. "But this is different," she protests, her voice cracking with the desperation of someone whose worldview is crumbling. "I actually qualify for this position. My background, my experience." "Your background consists of positions handed to you because of your father's reputation," I interrupt, consulting her file with the clinical detachment she once showed to my dreams. Your experience amounts to performing tasks that others accomplished for you while you took credit. Your references are people who knew your family rather than your work. The building's ventilation system provides a steady soundtrack to her humiliation, the same white noise that once accompanied my own rejections in rooms like this. But now, I'm the one making decisions, and those decisions are based on standards applied equally to everyone, regardless of their last name or family connections. Your application was evaluated using the same criteria applied to every candidate, I explain, my tone carrying the professional courtesy she never extended to others. 3 independent reviewers assessed your qualifications. All 3 reached the same conclusion: insufficient merit for approval. Victoria slumps in her chair, finally experiencing the powerlessness that people like me navigate daily. The expensive fabric of her suit can't protect her from the reality that competence matters more than connections, in a system designed to measure actual worth rather than inherited privilege. "What do you want from me?" she asks, and I hear echoes of every desperate applicant who ever sat in similar chairs, pleading with bureaucrats who held their futures in indifferent hands. "I want you to understand what it feels like to have your qualifications dismissed by people who never bothered to see your potential," I reply. "I want you to experience the frustration of being judged by standards that shift based on who you are rather than what you've accomplished." But even as I deliver this lesson in humility, I realize that revenge was never the point of my journey. The real victory isn't Victoria's defeat. It's the system I've built to ensure that merit triumphs over prejudice for everyone who comes after us. However, I continue, watching her expression shift from despair to cautious hope. Unlike the system that rejected me repeatedly without explanation or opportunity for improvement, I'm going to offer you something different. I slide a second document across my desk, a detailed analysis of her application's deficiencies, alongside recommendations for addressing each weakness. This outlines exactly what you would need to demonstrate to qualify for similar positions in the future: real experience, independent achievements, contributions that stand on their own merit rather than family reputation. The confusion in her eyes gives way to something approaching gratitude as she realizes I'm offering her what no one ever offered me: a genuine path forward based on fairness rather than favoritism. "Why would you help me after everything I've done?" she asks, and I hear the first notes of humility in her voice that suggest she might actually be capable of growth. "Because the goal was never to perpetuate the same unfairness in reverse," I explain. "The goal was to build a system where everyone gets judged by the same standards, where opportunities go to those who earn them, where competence matters more than connections." As she leaves my office with the roadmap for genuine achievement, I feel the satisfaction of justice served not through petty revenge, but through systematic reform. The embassy closes at sunset, but I remain in my office, watching the last light fade through windows that once seemed like barriers between me and my dreams. My reflection in the glass shows someone reborn not through bitterness, but through purpose. The accident that should have ended my story instead transformed me into someone capable of rewriting the rules for everyone who faces the same barriers I did. Tomorrow brings new applications, new opportunities to ensure that merit triumphs over prejudice, new chances to prove that systems can change when the right people finally get the power to fix what's broken. Each approval I grant honors not just the applicant's qualifications, but every person who was rejected by a system that valued the wrong things. The cycle is complete, but the work continues. In this rebirth, I didn't just gain power, I gained the responsibility to use it wisely, to build something better than what existed before, to ensure that the girl who once stood on the other side of bulletproof glass becomes the last person to face such arbitrary cruelty. The weight of authority settles over me like a mantle of purpose as evening falls over the embassy. Each light that goes out in the building represents another day of progress toward a system that actually serves justice rather than perpetuating privilege. And in the morning, when new applicants arrive with their dreams and documentation, they'll face a process designed to evaluate their merit rather than their pedigree. This is what rebirth really means. Not just getting a second chance at your own dreams, but becoming someone who can give others the fair chance you never had. The universe didn't just save my life in that accident. It positioned me to save the dreams of countless others who deserve better than the arbitrary cruelty I endured. As I finally lock my office and head home, the security guard nods respectfully, a small gesture that carries enormous meaning for someone who remembers when respect had to be earned through excellence rather than granted through inheritance. The building sleeps peacefully tonight, but tomorrow it awakens to serve justice in ways it never has before. The story ends where it began, with someone facing a bureaucratic system that holds their future in its hands. But now, for the first time in this institution's history, that system is designed to recognize merit rather than privilege, to reward competence rather than connections, to serve justice rather than perpetuate inequality. And every approval I grant, every fair decision I make, every barrier I remove echoes with the promise that no one else will have to endure what I did. The tables haven't just turned, they've been rebuilt entirely, creating a level playing field where dreams can flourish based on the strength of their foundation, rather than the status of their dreamer. This is my rebirth story. From victim to victor, from rejected applicant to fair arbiter, from someone crushed by an unjust system to someone who rebuilt that system to serve actual justice. The girl who once trembled while holding rejection letters has become the woman who ensures such letters are only issued when truly warranted, based on standards applied equally to everyone. The embassy doors that once seemed impenetrable now open to welcome everyone who has earned their place through merit rather than inheritance. And in that transformation lies the true victory. Not just personal triumph, but systematic change that honors every dream deferred and every hope dismissed by people who confused privilege with worth. The accident reborn me into someone who could finally fix what was broken. The visa they denied me 17 times led to a position where I could ensure such denials are based on fairness rather than prejudice. And the humiliation I endured became the foundation for empathy that guides every decision I make. Sometimes the universe takes everything away just to give you the power to rebuild it better than it was before. This is that story, a reminder that justice delayed isn't always justice denied, especially when you're reborn with the abilities to deliver it yourself.